The Galactic Concord arrived at the edge of the Sol system, with ships that shimmered like liquid silver against the blackness of space. Their fleet moved in perfect silence, no engines roaring, no comms chatter, just smooth, deliberate motion. Humanity had been watching them for weeks through deep space sensors, waiting, wondering. First contact was finally happening, and Earth held its breath. Aboard the orbital station Aurora, Captain Leo Grant stood near the main observation deck, his uniform crisp, his expression calm. He wasn't a tall man, but there was something steady about him, the kind of quiet strength that made people listen without him raising his voice. Beside him stood Maya Ruiz, a xenolinguist with sharp eyes and quicker instincts, and Derek Boone, head of station security, broad-shouldered and watchful, his hand never far from his sidearm. The Concord envoys stepped through the airlock an hour later. They were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their leader introduced himself as Envoy Corin, speaking in smooth, accented English that Maya had helped perfect through weeks of language exchange. The humans greeted them with handshakes, offered water, and led them to the conference chamber, a circular room with Earth visible through the wide viewport, blue and fragile against the stars. At first, everything went well. The Concord praised humanity's rapid technological growth. They admired Earth's art, its music, even its ancient myths. Corin spoke of peace, cooperation, shared knowledge. Leo smiled, nodded, offered cautious optimism. He knew diplomacy was a dance, and everyone had to take turns leading. Then Corin leaned forward slightly, his glowing eyes fixed on Leo. "There is one matter," he said, "that requires your immediate attention." Leo kept his face neutral. "We're listening." Corin explained that a high-ranking warlord from the Krellian Dominion, a being named Vex Tauren, had fled his own people after a failed coup. Vex was now seeking asylum. The Concord believed he carried vital intelligence about a growing threat beyond the Outer Rim, a coalition of rogue fleets preparing for war. His knowledge could save billions, Corin said. "We ask that humanity grant him protected status on your station or one of your colonies." Silence filled the room. Maya's fingers tightened around her datapad. Derek's jaw clenched. Leo didn't move, but something in his eyes changed, like a door closing. "Protected status," Leo repeated slowly. "You're asking us to shelter him?" "Yes," Corin said. "Not as a guest of honor, but as a strategic asset. The Concord will oversee his containment. You need only provide the location." Leo glanced at Maya. She gave a tiny shake of her head. She'd already run Vex Tauren's name through Earth's deep archives. What she found wasn't pretty. "Envoy Corin," Leo said, "before we consider this, tell me, what is Vex Tauren known for in your records?" Corin hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but Leo caught it. "He is a military strategist. Ruthless, yes, but effective. His actions during the Krellian civil conflicts were necessary, Maya said quietly, like the massacre on Luminar Prime." Corin's posture stiffened. "That incident is under review by our historical tribunal." Derek crossed his arms. "Under review?" "Over 2 million civilians vaporized in one strike. Children, elders, entire families gone in minutes. That's not under review, that's murder." Corin's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "In galactic affairs, Captain, morality is often secondary to survival. Vex Tauren may have done terrible things, but he also prevented wider war. Now he offers us a chance to stop something far worse." Leo stood. He walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth. The swirl of clouds over the Pacific, the green curve of South America, the lights of cities just beginning to twinkle in the dusk. He thought of his niece in Denver, his brother in Miami, the millions who had no idea their fate was being debated in a cold room above the atmosphere. He turned back to Corin. "On Earth we have a saying, you don't make deals with people who kill the innocent. Doesn't matter what they know. Doesn't matter what they offer. If someone's hands are covered in blood, we don't shake them." Corin tilted his head. "That is simplistic." "Maybe," Leo said. "But it's who we are." Maya added, "Our history is full of mistakes. Wars, greed, cruelty. But we learned. We built laws, courts, rights for the weak. We don't protect monsters just because they're useful." Derek stepped forward. "And if you think we're going to house a mass murderer on our soil while pretending it's for the greater good, you don't know us at all." Corin studied them for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Then you choose isolation over influence. Sentiment over strategy. The conquered respects your decision, but it will not forget it. The meeting ended shortly after. The envoys left the Aurora without another word, their silver ships vanishing into warp space as quietly as they'd arrived. Back in the command center, Leo sat heavily in his chair. Maya pulled up files on her screen. Images of Luminar Prime before the strike. Gardens, schools, a library shaped like a spiral shell. All gone. They'll come back, Derek said, leaning against the wall. With more than words next time? Probably, Leo replied. But we just told the whole galaxy who we are. That matters, Maya looked at him. What if they cut us off? No trade, no tech exchange, no help if something worse comes? Leo met her gaze. Then we stand alone. But we stand clean. Outside, Earth turned slowly in the void, unaware of the choice just made in its name. The stars watched, silent. And somewhere out there, a warlord named Vex Torin waited, not knowing that humanity had already drawn a line he would never be allowed to cross. Weeks passed after the Concord envoys left, and Earth waited. At first, nothing happened. Trade ships from neutral systems still docked at Luna Port. Data streams from distant observatories kept flowing. Life went on. But the silence from the Galactic Concord felt heavy, like the quiet before a storm. Then the message came. It arrived not through official channels, but as a public broadcast on every known comm frequency. The image showed Envoy Corrin again, but this time he stood on the bridge of a massive Concord warship, his expression unreadable. Behind him, rows of alien officers stood at attention. The message was short and sharp. Humanity has refused a reasonable request for galactic stability. In light of this, the Galactic Concord declares a provisional quarantine on all human-controlled space. No Concord vessels will trade, communicate, or assist human interests until further notice. Reconsider your position. The offer still stands. The words hit Earth like a cold wave. Stock markets dropped. Colonies on Mars and Proxima Centauri sent urgent queries. Scientists who relied on Concord data for deep space research stared at blank screens. But the real blow came 3 days later, when a Concord fleet, 20 ships strong, appeared at the edge of the Sol system and simply stayed there. Not attacking, not speaking, just watching. On Earth, leaders gathered in emergency sessions. In Geneva, President Elena Hayes listened as advisors argued. Some said they should give in. It's just one man, said Minister Cole. Let them keep him locked up. We gain allies' protection technology. What's the cost? Fleet Admiral Carl Briggs, an old man with a scar across his cheek and a voice like gravel, slammed his fist on the table. The cost is our soul. You think they'll stop with Vex? Once we say yes to one monster, they'll bring 10 more. And we'll be the jailers. President Hayes didn't speak for a long time. She looked out the window at the rain falling over the city. Then she said, "We don't become the thing we're fighting just because it's easier." Back on the Aurora, Leo Grant watched the Concord fleet through long-range sensors. They hadn't moved. They hadn't fired. But their presence was a threat all the same. Maya Ruiz worked late into the night, digging deeper into Concord archives using backdoor links she'd built during the first contact. She wasn't supposed to have access anymore, but she'd kept a few doors open. What she found made her blood run cold. Buried in old military logs, encrypted under layers of code, were records of Vex Torin's campaigns. Not just the Luminari massacre, but others. Entire colonies erased. Prisoners used for biological testing. And in every case, Concord observers had been present. Not stopping it, not condemning it, just recording. One file even showed Concord supply ships delivering weapons to Krellian forces under Vex's command during a so-called internal conflict. She brought the files to Leo at 3 a.m. He read them in silence, his face pale under the dim light. "This changes everything," he said. "It proves they're not just protecting him," Maya whispered. "They're using him, and now they want us to join them." Derek Boone paced the room like a caged animal. "So what do we do? Tell the world? The Concord will deny it." "Maybe," Leo said. "But truth has weight. Even if they deny it, others will wonder, and wondering is the first step to doubting them." But before they could act, the Concord made their next move. A formal delegation arrived not at the Aurora, but at Earth's orbital defense hub near Mars. This time they didn't ask. They demanded. Through a secure channel, Envoy Corrin delivered an ultimatum. Hand over control of your orbital defense grid to Concord oversight. Accept Vex Tauran as a protected guest under our supervision. Do this within 7 solar days, or the quarantine becomes permanent. You will be cut off for all galactic networks. Your colonies will starve. Your people will be left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. The message ended. No room for discussion. No room for compromise. President Hayes called Leo directly. Her face on the screen looked tired, but her eyes were clear. What do you think, Captain? Leo didn't hesitate. If we give them control of our defenses, we're handing them the keys to Earth. And if we take Vex in, we're saying it's okay to murder millions if you're useful enough. That's not who we are. I agree, she said. Tell the Concord we refuse. The reply was swift. The Concord fleet shifted position, forming a tighter ring around the system. Trade ships from neutral species received warnings. Do not approach human space. Risk of sanctions. Food shipments to Proxima Colony were turned away. Medical supplies stopped flowing. Fear spread. On Mars, protests broke out. Some called for surrender. Others burned Concord flags in the domes. But on the Aurora, something else was happening. Maya had found more. Buried in a corrupted data packet from a defunct Concord science vessel, she uncovered voice logs, recordings of high-level meetings. In one, a Concord official said plainly, "The humans are sentimental. They'll break when they see their children go hungry. Let them suffer a little. They'll come crawling." Leo played the recording for Derek and Maya in the quiet of the command center. "They're not just testing us," Maya said. "They're punishing us for saying no." Derek shook his head. "Then let them see what happens when you push humans too far." Leo looked at Earth on the main screen. Clouds drifted over Africa. Lights blinked on in Europe as night fell. Somewhere down there, kids were doing homework. Couples were arguing. Old men were watching the stars. None of them knew their entire future hung on a choice made in orbit. He made his decision. He sent a single message back to the Concord fleet. No threats. No anger. Just 6 words. We do not bargain with murderers. The words spread fast. Not just through official channels, but through private networks, pirate radios, colony message boards. People on Mars painted the phrase on walls. Students in Tokyo chanted it in the streets. Even neutral species began whispering it in their own languages. The Concord didn't respond, but their ship stayed, and Earth waited, not in fear, but in quiet defiance. Because sometimes, the strongest thing a person can say is no. And humanity had just said it to the entire galaxy. Months dragged by under the weight of the Concord's blockade. Earth's colonies grew quieter. Supply lines thinned. On Mars, rationing began. On Proxima Centauri, the last shipment of medicine had run out weeks ago. Still, humanity did not bend. The phrase, "We do not bargain with murderers," became more than a slogan. It became a promise whispered in homes, written on school walls, etched into ship hulls. Then, without warning, the silence broke. It started with a distress call, faint, broken, full of static. It came from Proxima Colony, a human settlement of nearly 50,000 souls orbiting a red dwarf star over 4 light-years from Earth. The message was short. Krellian raiders attacking, no Concord response, and please. Leo Grant heard the call in the middle of the night. He was on the Aurora, reviewing patrol routes, when the alert flashed red on his screen. He didn't hesitate. He called Derek and Maya to the bridge within minutes. "They're hitting Proxima," Leo said, pulling up the star map. "And the Concord fleet station near there? They're just watching." Maya's face went pale. "That's not neutrality. That's permission." Derek slammed his fist on the console. "They're letting Vex's dogs loose to punish us." Leo turned to his crew. "We're going. Now." The Aurora wasn't a warship, but it was fast, armed, and crewed by people who refused to let their own die while the galaxy looked away. Within an hour, the station's small defense fleet, 3 frigates and 2 support cruisers, formed up behind it. Among them was the Vanguard, piloted by Jake Morrison, a young man with quick hands and a dry sense of humor who'd grown up in Houston dreaming of the stars. On board the Vanguard. As chief engineer was Nina Patel, sharp-eyed and steady, who could fix a plasma conduit with one hand while drinking coffee with the other. They jumped to Proxima in record time. What they found was chaos. The colony's outer ring was on fire. Krellian raiders, jagged black ships shaped like claws, were tearing through the defense grid. They weren't just attacking military targets. They were hitting housing domes, water recyclers, the main med center. Civilians scrambled in evacuation shuttles, many already smoking from near misses. And hovering just outside the battle zone, untouched, unmoving, was the Concorde fleet. Watching. Bastards, Derek growled. Leo opened a channel. All ships, focus on civilian evac. Jake, take point on shuttle cover. Nina, keep our shields stable. We're going in hot. The human fleet charged. What followed was not a battle of equals. The Krellians had more ships, heavier weapons. But the humans had something the raiders didn't. They were fighting for people they knew. For neighbors. For family. Jake flew. The Vanguard. Like it was part of his body, weaving between enemy fire, drawing fire away from a shuttle full of children. Nina rerouted power mid-combat, boosting shield strength just as a plasma bolt struck their starboard side. The ship shook. Alarms blared. But they held. Leo directed the rescue from the Aurora, his voice calm even as sweat beaded on his forehead. One by one, shuttles docked with the human ships. Over 3,000 civilians were pulled to safety in under 2 hours. Then came the turning point. A Krellian command ship, the largest of the raiders, moved to destroy the colony's central hub, where hundreds still remained trapped. Leo knew they couldn't stop it head-on, so he did something reckless. He ordered the Aurora to fly straight at it. "Are you insane?" Derek shouted. "They expect us to be careful," Leo said. "Let's surprise them." The Aurora, battered but flying, shot toward the command ship at full burn. At the last second, Leo fired every point defense laser not at the hull, but at the ship's sensor array. Blinded and confused, the Krellian vessel veered, right into the path of Jake's Vanguard, which unleashed a full torpedo spread into its weak underbelly. The explosion lit up the Proxima sky like a second sun. Silence followed. The remaining raiders fled. The Concorde fleet did not move to stop them. As the humans finished the evacuation, Nina made a discovery. While patching damaged systems on a captured Krellian scout ship, she found a data core still active. Inside were encrypted files, coordinates, defense codes, colony layouts, and one file was labeled in Concorde script. She decrypted it with Maya's help over a shaky comms link. It was a supply manifest, dates, ship IDs, and a single line that made her blood freeze. Delivered per Concorde Directive Theta 9. Recipient, Vex Tauran loyalists. The Concorde hadn't just stood by. They'd armed the raiders. They'd given them everything they needed to hit Proxima, and hit it hard. Back on the Aurora, Jake lay in the med bay, his leg broken from the last impact, his face pale but smiling. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "We saved them," Leo said, gripping his shoulder. "That's what matters." But as Leo looked out at the burning remains of Proxima Colony, he knew this wasn't over. The Concorde had crossed a line. They hadn't just tested humanity's morals, they'd tried to break them with fire and fear, and now humanity had proof. Leo gathered his team in the quiet of the command center. No one spoke for a long time. Then Maya said, "We can't fight them with ships. We're outnumbered, outgunned." "No," Leo agreed, "but we can fight them with truth." Derek nodded slowly. "Expose them. Show the galaxy what they really are." Nina, still covered in grease and sweat, added, "If we broadcast what we found, it won't just be our word against theirs. The data speaks for itself." Leo looked at each of them, tired, hurt, but unbroken. "Then that's what we'll do. Not with weapons, with words, with proof. Let the galaxy see who's really bargaining with murderers." The fleet turned toward home, carrying survivors and secrets. Behind them, Proxima smoldered. Ahead, a new kind of battle waited. One not fought in space, but in the hearts and minds of 100 worlds. And for the first time since the blockade began, Leo felt something like hope. The plan was simple, but dangerous. They would not fight the conquered with guns or ships. They would fight them with truth. And to do that, they needed to get inside the conquered's own data vaults, somewhere no human had ever been allowed. Maya Ruiz knew it was nearly impossible. The conquered's central archive was deep in neutral space on a station called Viridia Prime. It was guarded by layers of encryption, biometric locks, and patrols from 3 different species. But she also knew one thing. Every system had a flaw. And the Concord, for all their pride, had grown lazy. They believed no one would dare challenge them. Leo approved the mission without hesitation. "If we're going to expose them," he said, "we need proof that even their allies can't ignore." Derek would go with Maya. He wasn't a hacker, but he was good at making people look the other way. Sometimes with words, sometimes with the quiet threat of his presence. They would pose as conquered data auditors, using forged credentials Maya had built from fragments of old diplomatic logs. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. They left Earth in a small unmarked freighter called the Wayfarer. Its hull dull gray, its transponder broadcasting a fake registry from a minor trade guild. Nina Patel stayed behind to monitor comms from the Aurora, while Jake Morrison, still on crutches, helped run simulations in case things went wrong. The trip to Viridia Prime took 11 days. Every hour felt like a lifetime. Maya rehearsed her cover story until she could say it in her sleep. Derek cleaned his sidearm 3 times, though he hoped he wouldn't need it. When they arrived, the station loomed ahead, a massive ring of metal and glass spinning slowly against the stars. Ships of all shapes and sizes came and went. No human vessel had docked here in months. Their fake credentials worked. Barely. The Varelian guard at the gate frowned at their IDs, his 4 eyes narrowing, but waved them through after a tense minute. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar. The corridors were wide, lit by soft blue lights and filled with beings from a dozen species. Maya's heart pounded as they approached the archive wing. This was the moment. One wrong step, one suspicious glance, and they'd be arrested. Or worse. Then they met Kyle. He was a Zenthari, tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that seemed to see too much. He worked in the data maintenance division, a low-level technician who fixed broken servers and reset forgotten passwords. He watched Maya as she tried to access a restricted terminal, her fingers trembling slightly. "You're not conquered," he said quietly, in perfect English. Maya froze. Derek's hand drifted toward his weapon, but Kale didn't call for guards. Instead, he leaned closer. "I've seen your broadcast. The one from Proxima. My sister lived on Luminar Prime. She died in the firestorms." Maya's breath caught. "You knew?" "I knew," Kyle said. "And I've been waiting for someone brave enough to say it out loud." He led them deep into the station, through service tunnels and forgotten maintenance bays, to a hidden terminal behind a false wall. "This connects to the core archive," he whispered. "But you have only 20 minutes before the next patrol. And if you're caught, I never saw you." Maya didn't waste a second. Her fingers flew across the keys, bypassing firewalls, cracking encryption layers, pulling files from the deepest vaults. Derek stood watch, his eyes scanning the shadows. What they found was worse than they imagined. Not just logs of weapons shipments to Vex's raiders. Not just orders signed by conquered officials. But voice recordings, clear, undeniable, of High Council members discussing how to discipline the humans by letting Krellian forces soften their resolve. One official even laughed, saying, "Let them burn a little." Sentimental species always learn faster through pain. There were payment records, coordinates, lists of colonies marked for strategic pressure, and at the center of it all was Vextoran, not a prisoner, not a fugitive, but a partner. Maya copied everything onto 3 hardened data drives. Her hand shook, but her mind was sharp. She wiped their access trail, reset the terminal, and nodded to Kale. "Thank you," she said. He gave a small bow. "Tell the galaxy what you saw." "For my sister. For all of them." They slipped out the way they came, hearts racing, the drives hidden in the lining of Derek's coat. Back on the Wayfarer, they didn't celebrate. They transmitted everything to Nina on the Aurora. She verified the files, checked for traps, and confirmed it was all real. Then Leo made the call. from the bridge of the Aurora. With Earth watching and the conquered fleet still lurking at the edge of the system, humanity sent a single message, not to one species, to all of them. It played on every open channel, every public network, every trading post from the Orion Arm to the Helix Nebula. The message began with silence. Then came the voice of a conquered official, calm and cold. Let the humans suffer a little. They'll come crawling. After that, image after image flashed, maps, manifests, death tolls, faces of the lost, the Luminari children, the Proxima medics, the burning domes, and at the end, just 6 words spoken by Leo Grant in a quiet, steady voice. We do not bargain with murderers. The broadcast lasted less than 10 minutes, but it changed everything. Within hours, replies began to flood in. The Varelians, honorable, ancient, and proud, demanded an emergency council. The Orlani, who valued truth above all, released their own hidden records confirming the Conquered's lies. Even some Conquered member species broke ranks, calling for investigations. The Conquered tried to deny it. They called the data faked. They accused humanity of sabotage. But the proof was too clear, too detailed. And for the first time, the galaxy saw the Conquered not as peacekeepers, but as enablers. On Earth, people gathered in streets and squares, not in fear, but in quiet pride. On Mars, colonists played the broadcast over and over. In hidden corners of the galaxy, other oppressed species whispered the same 6 words. Leo stood on the Aurora's observation deck, watching Earth turn below. Maya joined him, her eyes tired but bright. "Do you think it's enough?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Truth doesn't always win right away. But once it's out, it can't be put back in the dark." And for the first time in months, the stars didn't feel so cold. The emergency council met on a neutral moon called Ilaris, a place of white stone halls and open skies chosen because no single species owned it. Delegates from over 100 worlds gathered, some in person, others as holograms flickering in the cool air. At the center of it all sat the Concord leadership, their faces calm, their robes pristine, but their eyes sharp with worry. Humanity was not invited to speak first. They weren't even sure they'd be allowed to speak at all. But they came anyway. Leo Grant stood with Maya Ruiz and Derek Boone just outside the main chamber, dressed in simple Earth uniforms, no medals, no show. They carried no weapons, only the truth. Inside, the Varelian elder, a being named Thalos with skin like cracked marble and a voice like wind through canyons, opened the session. "We are here," he said, "because trust has been broken, not by one species, but by silence." One by one, species that had long stayed quiet stepped forward. The Orlani presented their own findings, records of conquered ships rerouting aid away from human colonies. The Cathari, small and quick-eyed, showed logs of secret payments to Krellian raiders. Even a former Concord logistics officer, a nervous insectoid named Jix, admitted under oath that Vex Tauren had been moved between safe houses with full Concord support. The evidence piled up like stones in a river, until the current of lies could no longer hold. Then Thalos turned to the Concord delegation. "Do you deny these claims?" The lead envoy, not Corin this time, but a senior official named Morel, stood. For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly she bowed her head. "We do not." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some gasped. Others simply nodded as if they'd known all along. Morel continued. "We believed we were acting for the greater good. Vex Tauren's knowledge of the Outer Rim warlords was real. We feared a larger war. In our fear, we made choices that betrayed our own laws. But you did not act alone," Thalos said. "You hid your actions. You let innocents die. You punished a species for refusing to do the same." Morel had no answer. Then Thalos looked to the back of the hall. "Captain Leo Grant, will humanity speak?" Leo stepped forward. He didn't stride. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked to the center and faced the gathered species, his hands at his sides. "We didn't come here to gloat," he said. "We came because silence helps liars. We refuse to shelter a murderer not because we're perfect, but because we've learned that evil grows when good people look away." He paused. "We don't want revenge. We want justice. And we want a galaxy where no one is asked to trade their conscience for safety." When he finished, the room was silent. Then one by one species began to stand. The Varelians first, then the Orlani, then the Cathari, the Zinthari, even a few former Concord members. They didn't cheer. They simply rose in respect. The Council's decision came quickly after that. Vex Torin, who had been hiding on a Concord moon, was arrested by a joint task force. Several high-ranking Concord officials, including Morell, were stripped of their titles and placed under guard. A new tribunal, made of judges from neutral species, was formed to try war crimes with human legal advisors helping shape fair procedures. But the biggest change was deeper. The Galactic Concord was reformed. No single group would hold unchecked power again. A new charter was written, with one line added at humanity's request. No species shall be asked to compromise its moral core for the sake of political convenience. Weeks later, back on the Aurora, life began to return to something like normal. Trade ships from friendly worlds docked again. Medical supplies reached Proxima Colony. On Earth, kids played under open skies, unaware of how close they'd come to being abandoned. Leo stood on the observation deck once more, this time with President Hayes on the comm screen behind him. "You did it," she said, her voice soft. "You made them listen." "We just told the truth," Leo replied. "The rest was up to them." Down in the engineering bay, Nina Patel laughed as she fixed a faulty relay. Jake Morrison leaning on his crutch beside her, telling a bad joke. In the linguistics lab, Maya worked with Kale, now living in exile on Mars, helping translate old luminary texts so their memory would never fade. Derek stood, watch on the bridge, not because he expected trouble, but because he knew peace had to be guarded. Not with fear, but with vigilance. And out in the galaxy, something new was growing. Species that had once stayed silent now spoke up. Alliances formed not out of fear, but shared values. Humanity wasn't the strongest, or the oldest, or the most advanced, but they had shown something rare, the courage to say no when it mattered most. Leo looked out at the stars, not as distant points of light, but as homes. Each one held beings with their own stories, their own struggles, their own choices to make. And now, thanks to a few stubborn humans who refused to bargain with murderers, those choices might be a little freer. The galaxy hadn't become perfect, but it had become honest, and sometimes that was enough.